He was supposed to die that night, pushed into the cold black lake by the woman he loved, gasping for air as his empire sank with him. But fate had other plans, and it came in the form of a homeless girl sleeping under a dock, who dragged him back from the dead. Now he's watching from the shadows, planning the perfect revenge, with the help of the only person who saw the truth when no one else did. Hello family, welcome to True Life Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The moon hung low over the water, casting fractured silver across the still surface of Lake Edgewood. Wind teased the surface in lazy ripples, the night air cool, but not cruel. The path to the lake, bordered by swaying reeds and moss-covered stone, was empty, except for two silhouettes moving side by side. Victor Brown exhaled slowly, the rich scent of pine and wet soil grounding him. He adjusted the scarf at his neck and glanced sideways at his wife. Tiana was radiant in the moonlight. A white cashmere coat wrapped around her like royalty, her golden hair tucked beneath a silk beret. She walked with quiet elegance, her stiletto heels making no sound on the damp ground. Too quiet, Victor thought fleetingly. I still don't understand why we came all the way out here, he said, his voice low, his breath visible in the cold. It's nearly midnight. Tiana smiled without warmth. You needed air. You've been working yourself sick. This place used to clear your mind. Victor rubbed his eyes. He hadn't returned to this lake in years, not since the company went public. It had been their favorite spot once. Private, peaceful. Now it felt unnerving. As they reached the edge of the dock, Victor stared out at the black water. It's strange, he said. I used to find this lake calming. But tonight, do you remember, Tiana interrupted, when you first brought me here? You said, this lake knows all my secrets. She leaned against the dock's railing, her eyes distant. I wonder if it remembers mine too. Victor turned toward her, caught off guard by the remark. Before he could respond, Tiana stepped closer, so close he could feel her perfume winding around him, heavy and sweet. I love you, she said softly. His brows knitted. Tiana, what's going on? She leaned in, kissed him lightly on the cheek, and whispered, Goodbye, darling. And with a sudden, practiced shove, she pushed him. Victor's feet slipped. His body twisted midair. He didn't even have time to scream. The cold hit him like concrete, his breath stolen instantly as the lake swallowed him whole. Panic surged. His limbs flailed, but years of avoiding swimming lessons haunted him now. The water was merciless, dragging him down, choking him with every gulp he gasped by instinct. His coat tangled around his arms, heavy and constricting. Above the surface, Tiana stood motionless at the edge of the dock, watching. Her face was expressionless. The only sound was the distant chirp of crickets and the soft plop of water returning to stillness. Then silence. Victor's thrashing ceased. She waited 2 minutes. Then 5. Still no body surfaced. She stepped back slowly, her boots clicking against the wooden planks. From her coat pocket, she pulled out a small remote and clicked it. Somewhere in the trees behind her, headlights blinked on. Tiana exhaled as if releasing years of burden. Goodbye, Victor, she whispered again. This time, not with love, but with satisfaction. She turned and walked away, disappearing into the night, never seeing the figure nestled beneath the dock, curled beneath blankets, clutching a torn sleeping bag. Lillian Monroe, eyes wide, heart pounding, had seen everything. And she had just watched a man die. Or so she thought. Lillian Monroe lay frozen beneath the old dock, her breath shallow, her hands clasped over her mouth to silence the gasp that wanted to escape. She had curled into her nest of scavenged blankets just before the couple had arrived. From the moment their footsteps whispered across the wood above, she hadn't dared move. She hadn't expected a show. She hadn't expected murder. She was used to drunk teenagers, early morning joggers, or lonely fishermen. Not well-dressed sociopaths in designer coats pushing men to their death. Her heart pounded so loud she thought it would give her away. She pressed her back tighter against the cold stone wall beneath the dock's foundation, as if it could swallow her whole. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she was barefoot, her sneakers drying nearby, and if she moved too fast, she'd make noise. So she waited. 5 minutes passed. The woman's footsteps faded into silence, and Lillian slowly, painfully, began to breathe again. Then she heard it. Splash. Not the deep splash of a body falling, but something softer, desperate, a choking, sputtering noise. She scrambled out from under the dock, dragging her blanket with her. The night air cut against her skin like knives. She ran toward the lake's edge, slipping on the wet grass, eyes darting across the black surface. A hand. A hand broke the water, weak, trembling, then disappeared. Without thinking, without planning, Lillian launched herself forward. The lake was freezing. It stole her breath the moment she hit it. Her teeth clenched instinctively, muscles locking against the cold. But she kicked through it, hands slapping the surface, searching the shadows for that hand again. There. A faint outline just beneath the surface. She dove. Her fingers brushed fabric, then an arm. She grabbed it, wrapped her arms around his chest, and kicked upward with all the strength left in her legs. The man was dead weight. Cold, limp, barely responsive. But he coughed, once, just enough to tell her he was alive. They broke the surface with a gasp. Water poured down her face, but she didn't stop. She dragged him toward the shore, her limbs screaming in protest, lungs on fire. When they reached the grassy bank, she collapsed beside him. He lay still, shivering violently, mouth parted but eyes closed. Lillian leaned over him, pressing on his chest. A weak gurgle escaped his lips, then another cough. He rolled slightly to the side and vomited lake water. "Jesus," she whispered, wiping water from his mouth with her sleeve. "You're alive." His eyelids fluttered open, just barely. "Don't let her win," he mumbled. Lillian blinked. "What? Who?" "The blonde." He didn't answer. His head lolled back, eyelids slamming shut again. Lillian looked around, soaked to the bone, her teeth chattering. They were alone. The stars above didn't care. The moon didn't blink. And she was responsible now. She dragged his body inch by inch toward her small makeshift camp. A faded tarp strung between two trees, a shopping cart stuffed with salvaged clothes, and a half-burned fire pit. She laid him on her spare blanket, stripped off his drenched coat, and tucked him in like a child. Then she tore open her last instant soup packet, poured its powder into a plastic jug with a bit of rainwater, and stirred with a toothbrush handle. It wasn't hot. It wasn't even warm. But it was something. He didn't wake up again, not fully. He stirred in the night, muttered strange things about betrayal, about stocks and signatures, about a woman named Tiana. Lillian kept the fire going with twigs and paper wrappers, watching the man's chest rise and fall. She didn't sleep. Not that night. By morning, the man was breathing steadily. His skin was pale. His hands were calloused, his nails clean. The cuffs of his shirt had initials stitched into them, VB. Who the hell was this guy? And what in the world had he gotten himself into? Lillian sat back, sipping the cold soup and staring at him. She'd saved a drowning stranger from a would-be killer. But in the silence of the woods, one terrifying truth echoed in her mind. If that woman had come back and found him missing, she might come looking. And now Lillian Monroe was part of something much bigger than her. By the third morning, the man stirred with intention. Lillian sat cross-legged nearby, chewing dry cereal she'd swiped from a gas station. Her eyes were trained on him as she watched a twitch in his fingers, then a grunt, low and hoarse, from the blanket pile. He pushed himself to a sitting position with surprising effort, blinking against the sunlight that filtered through the trees. "Hey," she said carefully. "You're alive. Congrats." His head turned toward her slowly, his eyes bloodshot and disoriented. Where am I?" Lillian poured him the last of the lukewarm soup from a cracked thermos. "You're at Camp Nowhere," she said. "Membership comes with a tarp, one ratty blanket, and all the squirrels you can fight off for breakfast." He looked down at himself, soaked pants now dried stiff, shirt wrinkled, the initials VB still visible on the cuffs. His voice rasped out. You pulled me from the water. I did, Lillian replied. Just call me Aqua Girl. He tried to smile. He failed. There was a long pause before he whispered. She tried to kill me. Yeah, Lillian said bluntly. I noticed. He closed his eyes. She thought I couldn't swim. She wasn't wrong. Lillian sat a little straighter. Why? Who is she? He hesitated, then shook his head. It doesn't matter. Not yet. His eyes met hers for the first time. Clearer now, sharp despite the exhaustion. There was something in them that hadn't been there before. Purpose. Cold, calculating thought. I need your help, he said. Lillian narrowed her gaze. You're not going to murder me and steal my cart, are you? I have no interest in shopping carts, he said. But I need to disappear. And I need a place to plan. And you want me to what? Hide you under my tarp while your psycho wife looks for a body. He struggled to his feet, swaying. No. I have a place. It's not far. But I'll need you to drive. Lillian laughed once. Buddy, I'm homeless, not licensed. He gave her a look. You can steal cereal from a gas station. I assume you can handle a key. The car was exactly where he said it would be, beneath a brush-covered tarp, deep off a forgotten service road. A matte black SUV, spotless and custom-plated with the numbers VB01. Lillian whistled. Guessing you're not the janitor at some tech startup. Victor didn't answer. He climbed into the passenger seat, stiff with pain, his voice a thin whisper. Drive. North. Follow the Pine Ridge. I'll tell you when to turn. The road twisted up into the forest, the terrain shifting from gravel to private trail, then finally to a narrow dirt lane almost completely swallowed by wilderness. After 20 minutes, the trees opened like a curtain. Lillian braked. Her mouth fell open. The house stood like a secret in the woods, 3 stories of cedar, glass, and stone. It was half camouflaged by nature itself, ivy growing along the walls, solar panels buried in the roof's angles. Steel shutters were hidden behind wood-paneled frames, and the driveway was protected by a biometric scanner built into a moss-covered boulder. He didn't hesitate. Victor pressed his thumb to the scanner. The gate beeped once, welcome home, and the iron gates clicked open. Inside, the temperature adjusted automatically. Lights flickered on with warm amber tones. Screens came to life from inside the walls, displaying news tickers, security feeds, and stock updates. It was like stepping into a fortress designed for someone preparing for the end of the world, or the end of a marriage. Lillian stood in awe, her dirty hoodie dripping on the hardwood floors. What is this place? She asked. Victor limped toward a hidden panel, pressed a code, and opened what looked like a panic room, lined with servers, laptops, phones, and hard drives. This, he said, is where I stopped pretending to be dead. Over the next few days, the transformation began. Victor shaved. He cut his hair. He ate real meals, carefully rationed from the stocked pantry and freezer. He moved with a limp, but more purpose every day. Lillian was given a room with actual bedding, a shower with steam that fogged the mirror, and clothes in her size ordered anonymously. She used the touchscreen console to browse things she'd only seen in shop windows. But it wasn't just comfort. Victor put her to work. You're smart, he said, watching her navigate a terminal. Faster than most interns I ever hired. You think outside the rules. I need that. They worked for hours each day. Victor showed her how to bounce IP addresses through onion servers, how to mask a digital footprint, how to intercept private feeds without being traced. She soaked it up like oxygen. In return, she asked questions. Sometimes he answered. I was a software developer. Security systems. Built the digital infrastructure behind a dozen Fortune 500 companies. Then Tiana convinced me to step into the spotlight. CEO boardrooms, interviews. I didn't know how deep she was digging until it was too late. Why kill you? Victor stared at the fireplace. Because dead men don't argue over power. The nights grew quieter, more focused. He studied news reports on himself. Victor Brown, presumed drowned. No body recovered. Wife grieving. She'd already frozen his accounts, initiated inheritance filings, and worse, was speaking to the press with a broken, beautiful face and crocodile tears. But the eyes gave her away. "She's too calm," Victor murmured, showing Lillian a video. "Too ready." Lillian frowned. "She's not grieving. She's waiting." Victor leaned forward, firelight casting shadows across his features. "Then let her wait. Let her think she's won." He looked at Lillian and handed her a laptop. "Now," he said, "let's take back my life." The first move came quietly. No explosions. No headlines. Just a simple envelope slid under Tiana Brown's front door. White. Unmarked. Sealed with a clean fold. Inside, a single Polaroid photo, grainy but unmistakable. A shot of the lake. A fresh handprint on the dock's edge. No note. No signature. Just the unmistakable suggestion. Someone had survived. Tiana stood in her marble-tiled foyer, staring at the photograph for a long time, the sharp staccato of her heels echoing off the stone. She didn't flinch. Didn't scream. She simply walked back into her mansion's heart, poured herself a glass of scotch, and sat beneath a massive oil portrait of Victor, painted before she'd grown tired of his decency. She burned the photo over a silver ashtray. But the next day, the housekeeper found muddy footprints, just one set, leading down the back garden path and ending beneath the master bedroom window. The security system had been offline for precisely 7 minutes. Tiana's hands shook when she called the tech company. They blamed a signal interruption. She didn't believe them. Back in the pine-shrouded fortress, Victor watched the footage from a drone cam, smirking as Tiana's carefully composed mask slipped in her garden. Her silk robe fluttered in the wind, her face tense with concealed panic. "She's cracking," he said, sipping coffee. "One hairline fracture at a time." Lillian sat across from him, one knee drawn up under her hoodie, eyes fixed on her laptop screen. She was reviewing a cloned copy of Tiana's phone logs. "She's been calling your lawyer 3 times a day," she said. "All within the last 48 hours. Also booked a one-way ticket to Nassau. Then canceled it." Victor nodded. "She's testing her escape routes. Starting to feel the walls." Lillian tilted her head. "What's next?" Victor tapped his temple. "We make her question reality. Make her believe I'm haunting her. Not just alive, but inside her world." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a flash drive labeled simply, "Mirror." The next stage took finesse. Victor walked Lillian through the plan like a general briefing his lieutenant. She would go in under a new name, Jenna Vale, a young coder from an obscure Eastern European tech school. Flawless references, skill set backed by real work Victor helped her fabricate, and a pristine digital history scrubbed into existence. Her target was Calder Technologies, a shell company Tiana now used as a financial funnel and PR mask for the empire she was stealing. Within a week, Lillian was hired as a freelance analyst and granted limited access to internal systems, exactly what they needed. From within the sleek, chrome and glass office, Lillian moved like smoke. She kept her head down, eyes hidden behind oversized glasses, using wireless contact taps to send Victor streams of data in real time. He fed her lines through a hidden mic when needed. Other times, she improvised with the poise of someone who'd spent her entire life surviving on instinct. Tiana never looked at her twice. But Lillian looked at everything. One night, Tiana returned home to find her television already on. Static buzzed on screen. She clicked it off. It clicked itself back on. The image cut sharply to surveillance footage of herself earlier that morning, pouring coffee in her kitchen. She stared at the screen, breath hitching. Then the image changed, the hallway behind her. The current hallway. She spun around. Nothing. But when she turned back to the screen, the image had gone dark. Only a message blinked in white text. "I see you." She dropped the remote. Her phone rang 3 seconds later. Blocked number. She answered, breathing. Then, "You used to say you loved my eyes. Still watching you." The line went dead. She didn't sleep that night. Back at the cabin, Victor leaned back, expression grim and deliberate. Lillian shut down the voice modulator program on her laptop. "That was cold," she said, slightly impressed. Victor's mouth curled. She never asked how my parents died. She never asked who I was before the money. She only ever asked how much I was worth. He turned to the screen again. Time to make her ask the one question she fears most. What if he's not dead? Lillian began to plant evidence more boldly. One day, Tiana's driver found a USB drive tucked into the back seat, containing audio files of Victor's voice, spliced together into cryptic, taunting phrases. Days later, she received an email from Vic at outlookghost.net with a video file of their wedding reception. Overlaid was a caption, "Till death do us part. Oops." At the same time, Victor leaked anonymous tips to news outlets about discrepancies in Tiana's timeline. Tabloids picked it up. Millionaire's wife caught in timeline lie. Was he pushed? New questions arise in Brown disappearance. Panic was a slow but infectious thing. By the end of the second week, Tiana was withdrawing from social appearances. Her tone on calls had changed. Lillian reported that Tiana's new assistant had been fired after being mistaken for a shadow in her hallway mirror. "She's unraveling," Lillian said, almost cautiously. Victor didn't smile this time. "She hasn't even started." He reached for the final piece of the puzzle, a hard drive containing recordings he'd made long ago. Conversations he and Tiana had. Moments of condescension, manipulation, veiled threats, proof of her cold-blooded nature. He had archived them not for revenge, but for legal protection, back when he still believed she could be reasoned with. Now they would become a weapon. One last mirror. Victor looked at Lillian. "She took everything I built. Everything I trusted. I don't want it back. I want to burn it." Lillian met his gaze, something fierce lighting in her eyes. "Then let's light the match." The night of the Brown Legacy Gala arrived like a thunderstorm, unavoidable, electric, and ready to shatter. The invitation had been circulated for weeks. A black tie event hosted by Tiana Brown, commemorating her late husband's life, legacy, and unbreakable vision. The media billed it as a public healing. Investors called it a strategic move. Tiana called it closure. She wore silver, a backless gown that shimmered like a blade under the chandeliers of the Vespera Hotel, where gold trim adorned the walls and every wine glass gleamed with careful polish. Her hair was sculpted into perfect waves. Her makeup was a mask, flawless, serene, practiced. She greeted guests with poise, kissed cheeks, gave rehearsed nods of gratitude. Cameras flashed. Champagne flowed. A string quartet played some mournful thing no one really listened to. But behind her calm, Tiana's pulse was pounding. Because ever since the invitations went out, she had felt eyes on her. In crowds. On elevators. In her dreams. The whispers of doubt had reached the edges of her world. No body recovered, strange emails. Is he really dead? She'd doubled her security. She'd changed her passwords. She hadn't slept in 4 nights. Still, she smiled like nothing was wrong. Until the lights dimmed. It began with a short film, Tiana's idea, of course. A tribute to Victor, featuring slow fades of old photos, childhood clips, and footage of company milestones. The audience applauded politely. Then, as the final image faded to black, the screen flickered. Once. Twice. Then changed. No one clapped. The room stilled. The new video opened with footage of Victor Brown, standing in front of a mirror, buttoning a shirt. A private moment. A home security feed. Dated 3 weeks ago. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Tiana's hand froze around her champagne glass. Victor turned toward the camera in the video. He stared directly into it. Then he spoke. Sometimes the dead rise. Especially when they're murdered by the living. The screen cut to a montage. Clips of Tiana entering the lake trail alone the night of Victor's disappearance. Her GPS coordinates. A time-stamped message she'd sent to Victor's lawyer that night. Make sure it's signed tomorrow. It won't matter after. More footage. A voice recording. Tiana on the phone with Victor's business partner, laughing. You said he'd sink like a rock. He did. Trust me, this is cleaner than a divorce. A deep silence fell across the ballroom. Tiana rose suddenly, face pale. This is a fabrication, she barked, her voice trembling, searching the crowd. He's dead. This is sick, illegal. This is defamation. But the screen didn't stop. Now it showed her bank transfers, hidden accounts, stock sales, real-time security footage from tonight. Her office, her private files opened, traced, and time-stamped by the very servers she thought were unhackable. He's alive, someone whispered from the back. Oh my God! Then the doors opened, and Victor Brown walked in. There was no music, no fanfare, just the soft click of his polished shoes against the marble floor as he entered the ballroom in a black tailored suit. His hair was shorter now. A small scar ran along his jawline. His eyes were calm, but cold. The room erupted into flashes of cameras, stifled gasps, a cascade of stunned disbelief. Tiana stumbled backward. Victor, she choked. No, this isn't real. He stopped a few paces from her. What's real, Tiana? He asked, voice low but steady. The part where you pushed me into a lake? Or the part where you signed my name while I choked on muddy water? Security, she screamed. But no one moved. Every guard she'd hired that night had been pre-screened. Paid. Informed. By Victor. Instead, two men in dark suits approached, but they weren't hers. They were federal. Victor turned to the crowd, voice raised just enough to carry. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption, but I couldn't let my murderer host a fundraiser in my name. That just seemed excessive. Laughter, nervous, shocked, echoed briefly. Then the men showed their badges. Tiana Brown was placed under arrest on charges of attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. Her business partner, found trying to slip out through the kitchen, was detained moments later. As they were let out in handcuffs, cameras flashing and voices rising in confusion and scandal, Victor stepped down from the stage. He didn't speak to reporters. He didn't give a victory speech. He simply nodded once to a young woman near the ballroom entrance, dressed in a sleek black suit, her hoodie long gone, eyes bright with quiet satisfaction. Lillian. They walked out together. No need to look back. Outside, in the cool night air, Lillian lit a cigarette and handed him one. He didn't smoke. He took it anyway. They stood on the hotel steps, beneath a city sky thick with headlines waiting to be written. Victor spoke first. Do you feel it? He asked. Lillian glanced sideways. The chaos. He shook his head. The justice. She thought for a moment, then nodded slowly. Yeah, she said. I do. A pause. Victor looked at her. This girl who had nothing, who gave everything, who could have walked away at any point but didn't. He reached into his jacket pocket and handed her a manila envelope. Lillian opened it. Inside was a deed, a bank certificate, an ID with her real name attached to a new identity, ownership papers for a property in her name, a trust fund. I don't pay debts, Victor said quietly. I honor them. Lillian stared down at the papers. You serious? Deadly. She laughed. That's a hell of a word to use, considering. Victor gave her a crooked smile. The first real smile she'd seen from him. Then they walked off into the night. One a man who had risen from the grave. The other a girl who had never expected to matter. Both survivors. Both changed. 3 months later, a heavy fog curled through the alleyways of East Grove, rising with the morning heat like smoke from unseen fires. The streets were the same as always. Cracked pavement, metal dumpsters, sleeping bags curled beneath fire escapes, cardboard walls barely keeping the world out. But one building stood out now. Once a boarded-up shell tagged with graffiti and rusted locks, it had been reborn in silence. The Monroe Foundation. A brushed steel sign glinted just above the entrance. Below it, double glass doors opened automatically as a line of people, young, cold, tired, stepped inside one by one. They were met not with fluorescent lights and forms, but with warm coffee, clean clothes, and quiet voices that didn't ask too many questions. And at the front desk, clipboard in hand, stood Lillian Monroe. She wore jeans and boots now, hair pulled into a neat braid. A navy blue jacket bore the foundation's crest over her heart, MF, but the eyes were unmistakably the same. Sharp, watchful, deeply human. She was no longer invisible. no longer afraid. A girl once forgotten by the city now ran a sanctuary for its broken. On the second floor, through glass walls and soft hallway music, her office overlooked the lobby. Framed on her desk was a Polaroid, a handprint on a dock's edge, smudged and faded. She kept it there as a reminder, not of fear, but of survival, of the moment the world changed. A knock came at the door. She looked up. A courier stood there, holding a black envelope. Gold trim, no stamp. She recognized the seal embossed on the back, VB. Her breath caught slightly. She opened it. Inside was a handwritten note on thick stationery, penned in dark ink. Lillian, I hear the foundation is changing lives. I'm not surprised. You were always meant to be more than a shadow. I've stepped away. No cameras, no boardrooms, no revenge left in me. Just air, trees, and peace. But know this, if ever the world tries to drown you again, you will not face it alone. You didn't just save my life. You reminded me I had one worth living. Until the tide calls again. Victor. Beneath his signature was a small metal key. No note explaining what it opened. She smiled faintly. Later that night, when the foundation doors were locked and the sky was streaked with orange and gold, Lillian climbed the building's rooftop. She looked over the city, the towers gleaming like thrones, the streets breathing below. Somewhere out there, Victor Brown had vanished again into his own quiet kind of exile. But this time it wasn't an escape. It was a return to himself. And she had found hers. She lifted her face to the wind and whispered, "Thank you." The lights blinked in the distance like fireflies. Below, the forgotten were waking up to new beginnings. With warm beds, open doors, clean slates. Lillian turned back to the stairwell, her shoulders steady. She didn't need saving anymore. Now she was the one pulling others from the water. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.